right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies might have inspired it. And today on the show, though, it is not going to be one of those regular episodes where we do that. Instead, we are a movie podcast, so we have to talk about the Oscars, which are this coming weekend. And we are going to get into some predictions as well as what we think should win, as well as some things that should have been nominated. Joining me, as he has for the last few years in a row, we've got Ben Miller joining me, film critic, and the David Thewlis of podcasting. Love that. But we got a great conversation coming up. Lots of great movies to talk about. So that is coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. We've got a lot of episodes on the way, and that way you will get them as soon as they come out. You could also follow me on social media at PiecingPod to find out about everything I'm up to, including the live shows, new episodes, and whenever I'm looking for guests for some new episodes. So do get in touch with me on social media at PiecingPod. And with that said, let's get into this year's Oscars. All right, it's that time of year again. It's time to talk Oscars. And joining me again, we've got Ben Miller. How's it going, Ben?
It's going good, man. It's so nice to be here live in this wonderful theater in Las Vegas with you, as every one of your podcasts is now in. Oh, wait, this is actually not occurring live. I don't know if are you able to adjust yourself for this low key experience instead of being in these live settings.
I have a great time no matter where I am, as long as I'm talking movies, you know? So
I get it.
yeah.
I get it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's been a fun this past year and continue to do these shows, but yeah, it's always great to talk Oscars, partially because, since we're kids, we probably both, I'm imagining, we're paying attention to all this, but
Totally.
also the other reason is exciting to do the Oscars episode is because we're done with 2024. And
we can it's been beaten into our bodies at this point. Like, it's the amount of Emilia Perez discourse I'm excited to not ever hear about again. In the last 4 weeks, we've had the I can't believe it's going to win Best Picture controversy. It's still going to win Best Picture controversy. Now it's not even in consideration anymore. It's
right.
It's been a long 2 years these last month. So
yeah, exactly.
Excited to move on to 2025 and be pissed about something next year.
I'm sure there'll be plenty to be pissed about next year, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of controversies. Maybe they'll come up along the way, but we might as well just start jumping right into our categories.
Let's do it.
As usual, we will cover the 4 acting categories: director, picture, and we start off with score because, of course, I'm a composer, and so score means a lot to me. So we're going to do that right now, and our nominees for Best Score are The Brutalist, Conclave, Emilia Perez, Wicked, and The Wild Robot. So Ben Miller, what will win, what should win, and what is something that should have been nominated?
So I think the will and should, since I first saw the film, I thought The Brutalist probably should be the Oscar winner, and I do think it will be the Oscar winner. It's such a decidedly singular score for the film that it is. It is also, it's like reactionary to the film, but also like complimentary and kind of in no way what you expect. Nothing like oh, what do you expect for this type of grand scope movie? It's like, well, not this score, but what it comes out is a perfect compliment to everything that happens. Ever since I heard it, I'm like, man, this thing is great. And I have no problem with that one being included. As far as what I wish was included, it would have never happened in a million years, just because of the film it was. But the score from All We Imagine Is Light.
Okay.
The music by Topshi. I don't know who that is necessarily. And then it's also like the music was based off of like the traditional composing pianist of this nun. So I mean, it's kind of like it's kind of like an homage. So I mean, obviously, it's not the kind of film that would ever be included, but it's one of the few times I'm like, man, cool score, and it would have been a really cool nomination. But when The Brutalist walks away with a win, I'll be perfectly happy with it.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great recommendation, though, and definitely a movie that has been on my list to check out. I have not gotten a
Great
chance
movie.
to see it, so I haven't heard the score either, but definitely looking forward to it. I agree that The Brutalist will win, and I will be perfectly happy with that. Although my should have win is it's just edging it out by a little bit, and that is Conclave. I
Okay.
think Bertelman's score is so damn good in that movie, and is like I don't know. For me, it's the most memorable score of the year. Even though The Brutalist, that main theme is just like
Hmm.
the best piece of music, like from any movie this year. But overall, though, I just love that score from Conclave so damn much.
So what are
Um,
your feelings on like the kind of the reactionary of like that's the negative? It's kind of like I almost feel like what Bertelman did was kind of like the Brahm of like Tenet or Dune,
and
and
that's what
kind
he
of
does.
he's like, okay, no, I'm going to make this for a smaller version of it, and I don't get the people who are like, oh, this doesn't really match. I'm like, no, this is like, I mean, it's exactly. You can't tell me that when they made the movie, it's like, no, 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 this is off the tone. No, this is exactly what they wanted.
Well, and the thing is the people in the movie, the characters, they believe what they're doing is the most important, biggest thing in the world, and
Totally.
that's ever happened to humanity. And so the score matches that, and it's also such an interesting movie because it like blends so many different genres and tones, and it's a very unique film. And I think that score
Yeah.
like really, really matches that well. For should have been nominated, and just like with yours, this is something that I think would have been a very long shot, but I just recently did a top film scores of the year episode, and so it would be silly for me to not mention yet again my number one from that list, and that is A Different Man from composer
Ooh.
Umberto Smyrelli. This is just a fantastic score, very like noir feeling, but then also it gets into all kinds of like weird, mysterious. It reminds me, it's very New York in the
Hmm.
style of it, and
Yeah.
it accents the humor, the dark humor of it, but also the mystery and the drama and just the emotion behind these characters. And it's a score that really stood out for me this year.
It's a good choice. Like, there's so many like low key scores. I'm like, man, those are like Evil Does Not Exist. Awesome
Yeah,
music that really complements everything the film does. Stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of those under the radar stuff. It's kind of like every time the Grammys nominates, it's just like there's so much good stuff, but they kind of have to be more populist. So
sure.
I get it, but whatever.
Yeah,
But shout out Chris Bowers because I really love everything Chris Bowers does,
yeah.
and like that's kind of like my if I was really gonna go out there and people are like really anti-brutalist, I would say that maybe the Wild Robot could pull that out. But
Yeah,
I just like Chris Bowers in general. But yeah,
it is a great score.
yeah,
I think Emilio Perez is the only one that doesn't fit, but
yeah, totally,
that's yeah.
totally.
So let's go to supporting actress. We've got Monica Barbaro for A Complete Unknown, Ariana Grande for Wicked, Felicity Jones for The Brutalist, Isabella Rossellini for Conclave, and Zoe Saldana for Emilia Perez. What do you think will win? What should win? And what should have been nominated?
Well, I think Zoe Saldana will win because some like she has always been the front runner for a long time about this, and then ever since the Emilia Perez controversy has kind of boiled over, she has been walking through the raindrops through it all. Every time
Yeah,
she is awarded something, she has a very dignified, graceful speech, not really throwing anybody under the bus. Every time she comes out with something else and be like, man, I really like that. And she's really well liked. She's, you don't think that, and for some reason, like, despite having a pretty lengthy career, no chances to ever get close to Oscar before,
yeah,
and this is kind of like, oh, this is the right spot for her. So it makes a lot of sense for her to win. I don't know if this will be Amelia Perez's only Oscar win, but if it's one to, this is the only one I feel totally confident in it winning.
sure, sure.
As far as so I feel pretty good in that. As far as the should win, I have these supporting categories are tough for me because I don't like to include somebody like Saldana or Ariana Grande because they're not supporting actresses. They
Mm,
are the leads of their film or co-leads of the film, so I don't want to include those. So of the rest of the lineup, a movie I do not like in A Complete Unknown, but I think Monica Barbaro is pretty great as Joan
mm,
Baez. Like the all the problems I have with Timothy Chalamet in that film, portraying a real life person, Barbaro comes in and just like, oh, this is what I want from Chalamet, that everything she's doing for Joan Baez. And
Yeah. Yeah.
a lovely looking lady as well, no, very easy on the eyes.
Hmm.
So I mean, of the lineup, that's definitely the one that I would choose. Outside of the nominees, the one that I would really want to be a part of it, I kind of go back and forth with a couple different options as far as like who is actually a the supporting actress. Like I would say Elizabeth Olsen and His Three Daughters, but that's kind of a co-lead thing as well. She was
Mm.
incredible in that. Or Katie O'Brien, Love's Eyes Bleeding. I kind of end up in Joan Chen in Dee Dee, who is
Okay.
just a
Yeah.
warm, lovely presence. She was. I saw the movie. It feels like 3 years ago, but I guess
Yeah.
it was back
Sure.
in May. But it's just one that never really caught on and never had the chance to get those kind of accolades. But Chen is so wonderful and warm and really catches that perfect middle ground of where you're like, I'm a parent and I know these kids, but I don't know my children anymore. It's a beautiful, really understated performance that'll only get better in time. And it's one of those like, man, we really missed out there.
That's a really good pick. That's a really good one. I hadn't thought of that, but I'm glad you brought it up. And I agree with you about what you said about Zoe Saldana. I think she is probably the best chance Emilia Perez has at this point, and
Yes,
absolutely deserved. I think all
I think
five of
she's good.
these.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think all five of these are great performances, and it's a
yeah,
really tough category.
yeah.
But I'm going with will win and should win, and this is kind of I never thought I'd be saying this, but Ariana Grande for Wicked.
Ooh,
I think this is a movie I had no interest in going into it, and I just thought it was so damn fun. And I think that category fraud aside,
yeah,
I think that she really pulls this off and makes the character her own. It's already an iconic character, and to like actually make her own version of it, I think she does a really great job. And does Ariana Grande, pop star, need to be an Oscar winner? Not necessarily,
no.
but she did her thing, and she did a great job. My should have been is very out there, but I wanted to include it anyway. It's Riley Keough from Sasquatch Sunset.
Okay, okay.
That is the weirdest movie, and it's just so batshit crazy, and she is so funny. And you wouldn't even know necessarily that it's her in the movie because she's under pounds of Sasquatch makeup.
Sure, sure.
But she really does something special in that as this just kind of she's the matriarch of this family of Sasquatches, and she is just she's still just a big dumb animal like the rest of them, but you could kind of see it on her face that she is just fed up to here with these idiot Sasquatches, and it is freaking hilarious. And she's great. I always love seeing whatever she does.
I love Riley Keough as well, and I always think she's really super underrated. It's one of those things where she is so good. You're like, oh man, I wish she was in more stuff. And then you're like, oh yeah, she's been in a lot of stuff. She's really good in all this kind of stuff. And then you're like, oh yeah, she's the ultimate nepo baby.
Yeah,
She's
she
Elvis's
is.
granddaughter. So I mean, like,
Exactly.
oh, I forgot about this. Yeah, but pretty much everything. Like, I think of her in like Mad Max, like Fury Road. Like she's great
Yeah,
in Fury
sure.
Road or various things like that. So there's a lot like eternally underrated Riley Keough. The original Girlfriend Experience, I believe.
Oh,
In the in
she,
the t- in the
yeah.
in the first season of the TV show, I think she was the lead.
Wow. All right. Well, yeah, we always want to see more from her, but
Absolutely.
let's go to supporting actor. We've got Yura Borisov from Honora, Kieran Culkin from A Real Pain, Edward Norton from A Complete Unknown, Guy Pearce in The Brutalist, and Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice. What will win, what should win, and what should have been nominated?
So I don't know what's been going on with supporting actor because it hasn't been a competitive race since 2016. Every year since 2016, supporting actor has been done in like October.
It's a
And
lot.
this it's every year. And this
Hmm.
year, exactly the same. Kieran Culkin showed up, and Kieran Culkin it was. And if you're talking about category fraud, this is easily the most egregious of the category
The
frauds. It's just like,
ultimate, the
I mean,
absolute ultimate. Yeah.
the movie begins and ends on his face.
Hmm.
The entire action is because of him. Every conversation about anything that happens in the movie is about him. He is in as much as Eisenberg is in. It's insane that he is not that he's a supporting actor. Regardless, he's going to win. He's going to walk away with it, and it's I do think it's a really good performance. He's in my top 5 of lead actors this year. I think he's really good in it. in a
Mm.
very singularly Kieran Culkin kind of way.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because they're like, oh yeah, Kieran Culkin, this movie, like it's one of those things where people are going to look at it and go, man, Kieran Culkin going to have a nice movie career. I don't think this is the case. I think it's the opposite, actually. He's going to be like, oh, he's the guy who's going to have the Oscar early. Early, he's in his 40s, but I mean, like, he's going to get the Oscar, and they're like, now what's he going to do? And it's like, nope, I think this is the end of Kieran Culkin as a, like, a, this is not like a propulsive thing. I think this is too singularly perfect for his stylings, like
Mm.
Succession, this, and then you're like, okay, like he'll do whatever he wants to do and be his own weird singular self. I don't think it'll ever connect again.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I think he'll walk away with the win. As far as who should win of this lineup, I love Yor Borisov and Honora. Like that's a great. Like I rewatched it last night because my wife hadn't seen it, and as the more I watch it, the more I love his performance. Just because he's perfectly attuned to what this movie is asking him of, and kind of like the Russian heavy that you expect him to be, and how sensitive he actually is. But he can still be the Russian heavy, but he's
Yeah.
still a nice guy. One of my favorite line readings of all of this year was "Because I'm not a rapist." Like it's such a nice little like funny line that's such a like succinct encapsulation of everything a scene is asking for. I love that nomination. It's a great nomination in hindsight. It looks great. I hope I see him in more stuff because he was really, really great in that film. As far as who should have been nominated, I, there's a. I talk about category fraud so much, and I'm just like, oh, my best supporting actor of this year was Josh O'Connor because he's pretty
Mm.
much a lead too
Yeah.
in Challengers. I think he's incredible in Challengers. But if you're talking about a true supporting actor, it's Adam Pearson and A Different Man, who
Yeah.
just comes in and blows the doors off the place and reframes the entire idea of what this movie is kind of. I know a lot of people didn't like A Different Man, but man, I was right on the wavelength of what it was asking for. It's like the weirdness going into the super dark comedy. I was so locked in, and his performance is such the linchpin for that switch from the serious to the dark comedy.
Yeah.
And he is so good and so committed and so funny and so self-aware without being like ableist. It's such a
Yeah.
good performance and such a good movie. I love that performance.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and I'll just start with should have been because Adam
Yeah.
Pearson's mine as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's one of those performances where it's like, what even is the movie if you don't have that person? Like,
Totally.
yeah, you can't fake that. Like,
No.
that's what the movie is. But yeah, fantastic performance, and I hope he gets to do more stuff.
I hope so too.
He's a good actor.
Yeah.
Will win and should win Kieran Culkin. I mean, come on, he's so
Yeah.
good. He's
So
so
good.
damn good.
He's really good.
Maybe there's a case to be made that he's just doing the Kieran Culkin thing, but he's so damn good. And yeah, I mean, come on. But also, just like supporting actors, a really great category. Everybody here was really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, good category. Another good category where you're like, you look at supporting actress and you're like, man, not a bad one of the bunch. I don't love that Jeremy Strong performance because
I thought he was great, but I mean,
people either like Jeremy Strong and his thing or don't like Jeremy Strong and his thing, and I do not like Jeremy Strong and his thing. So
yeah,
it's never really like a thing. They're like, oh, like Jeremy Strong really nail it. It's like no, like, and then you look back at his old performances. Like I was watching The Big Short the other day, and it's like, man, he's still going for it. He's still doing the Jeremy Strong thing back then. Like okay,
Yeah.
but it's fine.
he's got a brand. But,
He does have a brand.
Let's go to Best Actress. We've got Cynthia Erivo for Wicked, Carla Sofia Gascon for Emilia Perez, Mikey Madison for Honora, Demi Moore for The Substance, and Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here. What do you got?
Okay, this is the hardest category to pick
Yeah,
because
I think so.
like a couple of weeks ago, kind of like around the Emilia Perez beginning of this crap storm, like I was like, oh, Demi Moore has this in the bag, she's gonna walk away with it. And then there's been like a Fernanda Torres like undercurrent out of nowhere because there's a lot of I'm Still Here buzz because the movie actually came out and people are actually seeing it.
Yeah.
And then the Honora train started on full force, and then just this morning, Mickey Madison won BAFTA. So like, who the hell knows? I'm going to stick with the idea of Demi Moore because it's the right type of performance to award. Kind of like when I compare it a lot now, as far as the actual performance, I don't compare them, but like if you look at Brendan Fraser's Oscar for The Whale, like
Mm,
that's the same type of performance to award if you're Demi Moore. You're like, you've never really had the opportunity to do it, to give her any sort of accolades before. It's kind of like you were the pretty person, and then you've made good in this role that nobody kind of saw you coming as.
sure.
And you're going to come here, we're going to give you this Oscar, and then we'll probably never talk to you again. I feel like that's Demi Moore. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's what the Oscars like to do. And I feel like that's what they probably end up doing. But none of the three of Torres, Moore, or Madison would surprise me. As far as the should win, man, that's tough too,
It's
because
so
like
hard.
it's so hard because I mean, throw a blanket over those three. Those three are great performances. But I'm probably gonna land on Madison just
Okay.
because like it's such a specific thing she does. Like that character should have sucked, and it should have been like awful to watch. Like it shouldn't have been enjoyable. And everything she does, it's not like radiating goodness. She just like leans into what her character is doing, and you're just on board with it. And it's an impossible performance on
Yeah.
paper if you look at it. And you're like, I don't know how she did it. And the more I think of it, the more it grows on me. So I will give it that. Now, as far as the amount of women that were snubbed in this category and should have been in the
Tons.
category, tons. I mean, shout out to Marianne Jean Baptiste,
Mm.
Zendaya in Challengers, Nicole Kidman in Baby Girl, Tilda Swinton in The Room Next Door. But pour one out for my until this recent until watching Nosferatu, I did not like Lily Rose Depp. But
Mm.
man, did she deliver for me whenever I came into that movie. I was like, okay, like you're not half-assing this lady. You are really going for it. And without her commitment to the bit and the personality swings, that movie doesn't work.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I love that performance. And so I'll land on her, even though Marianne Jean Baptiste is like right there.
Yeah, fair. That's absolutely fair to have both of them neck and neck for that. So, uh, I will. Let's see. So, of course, like you were just saying, it's between those three. I mean,
Yeah.
the other two, sure, but it's between these three. I mean, I think personally should win is Demi Moore. I mean,
Mm.
The Substance is the movie of the year, and she's just incredible. And like you said, I mean, even on a political level, you could just say like, "Hey, we have never gotten a chance to award her, and here it is," and it's
Yep.
perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It's also awarding horror, which is something
Totally.
that is so big right now, and that's really exciting. I am gonna say that she also will win. I've been wanting to say that, and it's so hard because we keep seeing it go back and forth between these three. But I think it's gonna happen, and
Mm.
I'm gonna probably cheer when it happens.
Totally.
Um, Sticking in the horror vein, though, but a different horror movie than Nosferatu, I am going with Naomi Scott for Smile 2 for my
Ooh.
should have been. What a freaking performance! I mean, an actual realized pop star she created.
Totally.
Like it's just a person who we now are going to forever look as Sky Riley. And like I listen to her music and I and the movie rules. It's actually I liked Smile 1 as well, but this one's a
Yeah.
step up. And yeah, it's just a fantastic movie, and she just absolutely sells every bit of it.
Some of the best eye horror acting.
Yeah, sure.
Just I've never seen like terror come through eyelids before.
Yeah.
And man, she is a lot of great horror performances this year. A lot by women too. Like you're talking about like Willa Fitzgerald and Strange Darling, or
Oh, so
this
good.
is like like Demi Moore, obviously. It's like man, it's just like horror is really like I never say it's a resurgence because it's pretty much the only economic economically viable genre for films these days. You can
Sure.
make them for 10 million and they make 110. Almost
Yeah.
like clockwork. But I mean, you have the opportunity for people to they're starting to realize this, so they get in and they're like I can really take chances. So you have somebody like Sydney Sweeney coming in and making Immaculate,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like you said, or like Lily Rose Depp coming in doing Nosferatu, and people taking chances on horror, and these studios realizing how economically viable they are without having to do a lot of you don't have to pump out a lot of the stuff for this. You can have the hey, I'm going to put some people smiling weird in the subway or at baseball games, and
Yeah,
that's what's
yeah.
going to sell the movie. Yeah, so great resurgence for a great choice by Scott. That's a good pick.
Right on. And actually, real quick, just because we're talking about how great horror has been recently, and like you said, not really a resurgence, just it's been great. Long Legs. I was going to mention Alicia
Mm.
Witt is the other supporting actress that I was going to consider, but I
Ooh,
ended up going with Riley Keough. But yeah,
original
but
Scream Queen.
yes, absolutely,
Oh.
absolutely. So we got Best Actor. We've got Adrian Brody, The Brutalist, Timothy Chalamet, A Complete Unknown, Coleman Domingo, Sing Sing, Ray Fiennes, Conclave, and Sebastian Stan, The Apprentice. And real quick before you answer, uh, if there wasn't category fraud and if Culkin was in this category, do you think you'd have a chance?
No,
Okay.
just because it does like if you look at if you look at like the performances that are actually in like contention, like between Brody and Chalamet, you're talking about powerhouses in their movies.
Hmm.
And I think the co-headlining hurts because like if he is a lead actor, and let's say he bumps out Stan just for the sake of argument, probably how the actual voting went down. So let's say if he's in there, like you're talking about Sing Sing is and Coleman Domingo and Sing Sing's probably the least prominent of those performances. And then Culkin is like less than that of the prominence. But like Fiennes is all over Conclave and it's
Sure.
big.
Yeah.
And Chalamet is obviously all about A Complete Unknown. And Brody is in 2.5 hours of screen time worth in The Brutalist. So I mean, like it's so focused on the lead, and Culkin being in there would kind of be an anomaly of the group. So
Yeah, that's
I
true.
don't think so. Uh,
Okay.
Now I would really be interested what a supporting actor lineup looks like without Culkin and where that actually stacks up and who actually emerges.
Yeah.
I think. By the way, I think there would have been a convergence around Edward Norton to get him an Oscar,
Mm,
but that's
yeah.
just my opinion.
Yeah.
As
I
far
can
as
see that.
the who will win, it's so strange having 6 months ago you said, "Hey, do you think Adrian Brody's going to ever win a second Oscar?" It's like I don't know if he's ever going to get nominated for a second Oscar,
Sure. Sure.
and now I'm pretty confident that he's going to win a second Oscar just because. Like if anybody who has problems with the Brutalist, it's never Adrian Brody. It's never
Right.
like it's actually overrated. They're just like, man, that's an incredible performance that goes all over the place. Like as far as the ups, the downs, nailing the accent, like that accent. The first 5 minutes of that movie, you're just like, I don't know about this. Like
Yeah.
this is this what it's going to be like the whole time? It's consistent with it, and you just kind of move past it. And his performance is so integral to how that movie works, and it's in a specific way where you know Brody is so good at underplaying for a guy who can go really really big. When he
Hmm.
goes quiet and underplays stuff and does a lot of we talked about eye acting, a great eye actor,
Yeah. Yeah.
excellent. Like so, I just don't see it as a way to I view the Chalamet aspect as the Austin Butler of it. Like, I don't know if they feel comfortable making him the youngest Best Actor winner ever. And also, like, the Oscars don't love a tryhard, and
Hmm.
Chalamet is trying really hard,
He does seem
which
to be. Yeah.
which is fine. I get it. It's fine. He's a delightful presence, and I like Chalamet in general. I do not like this performance, but I do like Chalamet in general. I think Brody will win. I think of this lineup, it's tricky because my favorite male performance of the year was Sebastian Stan in A Different Man. So
Right.
it's not,
Right.
it's so, I kind of give him points for that. But of the lineup, I think it's kind of hard to argue against Brody. As far as as far as who should have been nominated, like I said, I love Sebastian Stan, A Different Man. He would have been my choice, or Kieran Culkin. But I kind of even want to shout out Glenn Powell in Hitman because that's a
Mm.
that's a movie star performance that if I've ever seen one. But this is what I'll say: it's Aaron Pierre in Rebel Ridge
All right. Yeah.
because that is a guy who showed up 2 weeks before the movie was about to roll. He's like, "Hey, you weren't our number one choice. You have to show up. Can you make this happen?" And not only does he make it happen, he makes it sing. And he goes in there with physicality, with like a little bit of deviousness, with he just kicks the door down and going. It's not like a situation where it's like, this is my movie star chance. He just goes in and goes like, okay, I'm gonna deliver as best I can, and everybody goes, oh, this guy's a movie star,
Yeah.
cool. And
Yeah.
God, I love that performance.
It's so good. It's also my should have been. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up because
Yes.
it's certainly outside of the box of what we usually see, but
Totally.
he's so damn good. And like you said, like throughout that whole movie, you're just thinking, wow, this guy, if he doesn't get swallowed up by a Marvel or a TV show or something, he's going to be so huge. So
There's so many people mad he wasn't the Green Lantern, and I'm like, I'm so happy he's not the Green Lantern.
Thank God. Yeah. But yeah, so he's awesome. I okay, so I loved Adrian Brody in The Brutalist as well, but so first of all, I think Chalamet is going to win somehow. I
Okay.
don't necessarily like that, but with all of the ups and downs of the award season, like I think that's just kind of where it's headed. I think it was tied between Brody and Fiennes for Conclave, and I give a slight edge to Ray Fiennes for
Mm,
Conclave. It's partially because it's just such an enjoyable performance and it's such
yeah.
a fun movie and I just had such a great time with it, but it's also heavy and it's also got so many layers to it and he is just so fantastic and I am always excited to see Ray Fiennes. He also pulled off a great double feature this year with The
Mm,
Return, which was fantastic. So he is just, I don't know, he's kind of the big star of the year between those two movies for me. And so that's where I would lean, although I would not be any bit mad about Adrian Brody winning. Timothy Chalamet, I agree with you. I like him, but I don't think this is the performance to award him for. But again, I think it'll probably happen.
yeah, and it's gonna be. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine about this. Like the fact that he's here for a musical biopic, and every time they do a musical biopic, they have to award it. And this when we do this episode next year, and I said, "Do you think Jeremy Allen White's going to win for the Bruce Springsteen movie, which is terrible, that everybody else seems to love?" Like
Mm,
it's going to piss me off again too. So I mean, these 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 movies are so. This is a different conversation, but every time somebody is nominated for a musical biopic, I want them to transcend
yeah,
what what everybody expects, and Chalamet just didn't do that like at
yeah,
all for me. He just went in and went, "Oh," and he's like, "Oh, he worked really hard," and I'm like,
yeah,
and in the words of the grandpa from Christmas Vacation, so do washing machines.
yeah,
Like I
sure,
don't care how hard he worked. Like
yeah.
give me something. But that's
You
me.
know who should have been nominated for Best Actor is the CGI monkey from Better Man.
Now
That
we're talking. Now
that
we're
would have been
talking.
a nomination. I would have definitely been voting for that one,
See,
but
even a movie like Better Man, which is like okay, it's the criticism of like nobody knows who Robbie Williams is. It's like I think we need a musical biopic of a musician we don't know.
yeah,
Like
why
that's a
not?
really good idea. Why he's a monkey, I think is a mistake. But like the idea of at least they tried something like it wasn't hitting the beats of everything we know, and like even if you don't know his music, you're like, oh, I do know this music, and it's like, okay, well, these type of things, like Better Man was the best musical biopic of the year.
Oh, hell
I agree.
yeah. Hell yeah, it was. So let's go to Best Director. We've got Jacques Audiard for Emilia Perez, Sean Baker for Nora, Brady Corbett for The Brutalist, Coralie Farge for The Substance, and James Mangold for A Complete Unknown. What do you got?
I for sure thought that this was going to be the only category that was going to be a walk in the main ones, but I thought Brady Corbet was going to walk away with it, and then the last couple weeks, I'm like, man, I guess it's going to be Sean Baker. And now, there hasn't been a best director, best picture split in a while, but I mean, it feels like there's a chance. So I'm going to say, as far as who should have been, who should win, I think it's Corbet, just because I think it's the hardest job. He did, he pulled off something that should not have been pulled off, and he
Yeah,
figured
yeah.
out a way to make it happen.
And for
And
cheap, too.
for cheap.
Yeah.
Yes, in VistaVision, like somehow 70 millimeter able to do that thing. And I, being in the director's branch and the director's branch voting on this, I think might give him a slight advantage because so many of those directors are film snobs as far as like 70 millimeter. Do you know how heavy the print was? All that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
I get that. And I think that might push him over the top. So I actually do think he will win as far
Okay.
as he should win as well. If Baker wins, it won't surprise me at all. But if it, I think there is competition there just because of what he was able to pull off. And like Honora kind of tracks with Sean Baker's previous filmography. It's not like this is not like, oh man, he really took a deviation and this is a thing that he's never done before. And it's like, no, 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 this is him just honing his craft and really in track of the things he's done. And people just didn't see enough of his things.
Hmm.
Corbet just takes a shot in the dark and it makes it work. And I think it's harder. I think people will recognize the effort of his undertaking more than it will be Baker.
Mm.
Baker, even though it is decidedly a Sean Baker movie, I don't see it as having the directorial stamp that The Brutalist does.
Yeah.
As far as who should have been nominated, man, the more I talk about all these categories, the more I'm like, man, good year, just all across the board.
It's
Like,
a great year.
you could say Ramel Ross for Nickel Boys or Diz Villeneuve for Dune Part 2, somehow snubbed again.
Mm.
Uh, George Miller somehow not getting any sort of attention for Furiosa. Guadagnino for Challengers. But I'm going to land on my guy, Robert Eggers, because
Cool.
the most intentionally directed film of the year. Like, Nosferatu looks every penny that Robert Eggers got. He refused to do anything besides build an ancient life size castle in the middle of Germany. I
Yeah.
assume like he is so attention to detail and specific and every single little. He's an insane human, and this is the first time I was like, wow, I get it now. I get the Eggers hype. Like I've always liked Eggers films, but this is the only time I'm like, okay, this guy's a different level of it's like Kubrick levels of like insanity. Like
Sure.
I
Sure.
appreciate the insanity. It's not normal behavior. It's probably not even healthy behavior, but I mean, I appreciate that much.
Yeah, he'll get there one of these
Yeah,
days.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know what project it'll be, but it'll happen. But yeah, I think Brady Corbett should win. I think it's like you said. It's just it's such a vision, and
Hmm.
he absolutely nails it. I do think that this wave of Sean Baker will continue to happen, and I think Sean Baker is going to win for Nora. So I think that's where we're headed. But
Yeah.
I won't be mad about that.
I won't either. I
I
think it's
love
a good
Sean Baker.
job. Great job. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, should have been. It's got to be George Miller for Furiosa.
Yeah.
It is just talk about insane people. It's just a work
Totally.
of
Totally.
mad genius. Just he created this world, and I want to see every last bit of detail that he wants to throw at us. I know it didn't do well, which is just such a baffling shame, but I wish he could just make these every 5 years or something.
Totally.
Like I would just follow him right down that path. He's amazing, and we're all gonna look back at this time and just be like, "What did we do?" Yeah.
Yeah. It's. I think the biggest problem was that everybody had Fury Road on the mind. Went in there expecting Fury Road. Instead, you got what George Miller does is he put Fury Road for 30 minutes in the middle of it. And you're
Yeah.
like, holy moly. And then you're just like, when's it getting back to that? And it never really got back to that because it's not what he was to do. He's telling a different story. He's not
Right.
doing like it's the Home Alone 1, Home Alone 2. It's like, let's just redo it in a different setting. It's like, no, 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 that's not what he's doing. He's telling a different type of story. And too many people were expecting Fury Road, by the way, which also did not make a ton of money, kind
Yeah.
of a box office failure.
Yeah.
And yeah, Furiosa is definitely one of those like lost in the shuffle ones. Shout out to Chris Hemsworth, his best performance. I mean,
Oh, it's
just
so good.
incredible in that movie.
So
Uh,
good.
like my wife loves Chris Hemsworth, and she's like, "When are we gonna watch Furiosa?" And I'm like, "Well, I have to prepare you for him to get his nipple ripped off. Like, I have
Yeah.
to like I can't just go into that assuming the best." But that's a great
Yeah.
pick. That's a great pick.
So let's go to Best Picture, the big one. We've got a really great lineup here. We've got Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. What do you got?
So as far as what should win, my favorite of this group is actually it is The Brutalist, just
Hmm.
because I thought I was thinking it's like this is not my number one film of the year, but it just happened. It's like, well, it's grows on me so much more than the more I think about it. Even though it's not like a movie I really want to revisit a whole lot. It's funny. It's definitely a movie that grows the more you're away from it,
Hmm.
and the more I'm away from it, the more I'm like, this is a true masterwork. I think it's the movie that should win. I don't think it's going to win. I think it's going to be Anora, just because it's so like the I don't know where the Anora train came from. It kind of came out of just really out of left field. Like I thought it
Yeah.
was dead in the water, and then all of a sudden it just showed up, and it's like, no, Anora's going to be the thing. I'm like, well, I'm happy with. Like I said, I just rewatched it last night. It's this has been a really strange season as far as the ebbs and flows. Like I never really thought Amelia Perez was actually going to win Best Picture, because everybody was saying it's like it was too much of the I can't believe this thing is going to win Best Picture. It was too much
Yeah.
in the other direction. And Nora and the Brutalist don't have that. Like the Brutalist is much more like the movie nerds version of what a Best Picture winner should be.
Yeah.
Like it's guy, you don't like the cool thing about the Brutalist is the worst critic and the best critic both love the Brutalist. Like the guy who's like, no, you don't get it, thematics and da 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 da, and you're like,
Yeah.
whatever. And then the guy's like talking really smart about it, also loves the Brutalist. So
Sure.
it's I don't think it'll win. I think it'll be Anora will win Best Picture, and I think that's a cool Best Picture win, because I don't think that's a type of film that the Academy is willing to generally give Best Picture. A sex centric female led film about and Russian oligarchs are there, and there's a 40-minute slapstick comedy routine. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a very odd film to be nominated, even be in the conversation to win. The Brutalist is slightly more traditional, kind of like one of those like swords and sandals epics without any of the with the smaller scale. But
Sure.
it wouldn't surprise me if either one of those won. If anything out of those two won, like there's some like whispers of a complete unknown, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know what the hell you guys are talking about. Like I don't see that world happening, and that I'll throw my hands up if that happens.
That would be
It's
a
like
bummer.
bummer.
Absolutely.
That would is yeah, exactly. You want to talk about Amelia Perez? It's like, oh, this is going to be a Best Picture winner. It's like, yeah, we can't have Love Vaginoplastia win, but at the same time, like having him goes like, do you have any kids? I have thousands. I'm like, oh no, don't do that. Like, so I think it'll be a Nora, though Brutalist is excellent, and I do think it should be winning. But as far as what my number one film of the I talked about Nosferatu, so I would have included Nosferatu, but I do shout out for Sing Sing, because
Mm.
Sing Sing, I watched it really early in the year and it held number one for the longest time, and it's just such a a film of male sensitivity in a place supposed to be devoid of sensitivity,
Right.
and it's such a specifically interesting type of film, and one that I don't think gets made much and won't get made much again, just because it's not the type of film that makes money. It's not the type of film that's like commercial. It's a time and place type movie. A specific I'll remember that film for a long, long time. So shout out to that one.
Yeah, great, great pick. Definitely would have been worthy to be in this lineup for sure. Um, so right off the bat, I think should win for a lot of the reasons we talked about with Demi Moore.
Yeah.
It should be The Substance. Just
Okay.
like let's talk about horror and the moment that horror has been having these last few years, and let's get that out in the open. Like I think
Yeah.
it's also the movie of the year. I think it's the movie that has kind of dominated this year in movies. We talk about the Grammys, how it has to be more populist. Like,
Yeah.
like it doesn't have to be, but at the same time, The Substance it's got the goods and it's like worthy of the award. So that's what I think should win. As far as will win, I think that there is that slight chance that could happen. So I think that that's in the conversation. But
Okay.
then it really is between the Brutalist and Honora, like you were just talking about. And if you would asked me if we had recorded this like 2 weeks ago, I probably
Yeah,
would have said The Brutalist.
me
But
too.
right now, I gotta say it's gonna be Anora, and I think that's just where we're headed. But
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. My should have been completely out of left field, something that would never be nominated in a million years, but it is such an exciting and fun and unique movie that you've never really seen anything quite like it before. Hundreds of Beavers. Um, could
God,
you
you're
imagine?
one of those guys.
Yeah, could you imagine? It is just, I mean, it's a movie that kind of, reinvigorates the idea of what movies can be and of the creativity that goes into making movies. And some of these movies on the list, like they're great movies, but they're just, they're stuffy and they're the same things that we see year after year. Hundreds of Beavers is a unique and just amazing creative burst of energy, and that deserves some recognition, I think.
Yeah, and it tracks in line with like the substance because I had a friend who was telling me it's like movies aren't they don't make original new interesting movies anymore. And it was like right when the substance came out, and I'm like, well, let me tell you,
Yeah,
like same thing with Hundred of Beavers. I like the chances. Like, give me Sasquatch Sunset, another great example. Like, give me something I've never seen before. Like
sure.
even something as silly as like Flow, which doesn't like reinvent the like storytelling wheel, but at the same time does things in certain ways where you're like, oh, it doesn't have to look perfect. It doesn't
Mm,
have to it like if you kind of it doesn't have to have any dialogue and it doesn't have to feel like a trick. Like anything that takes a chance, I'm always going to be much more appreciative of than something like A Complete Unknown that does not take a single chance but thinks it takes a chance.
right.
Or something like September 5th, which is acting like it's really doing all this really interesting thing, but in reality it's a cowardly film that doesn't take any chance.
Mm,
So I will always appreciate the effort when it comes to I'm trying something new. Like even if like say what you want about Amelia Perez, it definitely tried to do
yeah,
something
yeah,
else. I mean, it yet you have to. I like the try, I like the effort, but you do still have to have the execution. So
sure.
the the opportunity to show me something new is always something interesting, and something like something like the friggin' Beavers. There's one out of every 10 critics is like, no, you don't understand. You have to watch it.
Yeah.
Like, so I get it.
It's amazing. But yeah, I think we got a lot of great picks here with our should have
Yeah,
beens, and I think we're pretty much kind of clearly the race is coming together in a way that we're seeing a lot of the same things are
yeah.
winning, and so we kind of know where it's going. But then again, who knows? We never really know for sure. But yeah, I think we got into a lot of great stuff here. Any closing thoughts on the year of 2024, Ben, before we wrap it up?
Well, I'm very excited for Conan O'Brien. I'm very the excited
Yeah.
the idea of somebody who knows how to work a room and talk about like the energy he brings is so singularly different and spontaneous. Like, is he going to have a masturbating bear on TV? It's possible. Like,
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
one of those type of things. Like, I love the idea of that. But the more I think about this year, the more it's not like oh it has like these 7 masterpieces. It's more like you know what movie I really liked? It's like 40 deep,
Yeah.
like of films. I'm like oh that's a really good movie. Like Wicked, great example. Like I don't think Wicked is the end all be all of cinema. I think there's a lot of issues I had with it like visually, but
Mm,
I still think it's pretty good movie and I think it's like 50th on my list. I'm
yeah.
like that really says something. Like if you look at like the international film lineup, I'm like, man, those are just banger after banger. Like the fact like the girl with the needle being in this lineup, like that is talk about a horror movie. Like, oh
Mm,
my god, that is a terrifying film and stuff like that. And then having stuff like that or documentaries like Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, which is an awesome, awesome film. A film you will love if you
oh
have you
yeah.
seen it yet?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh,
No.
you're gonna love it.
Okay.
It's so it's a very specific type of film. It's a little hectic, but I mean, when you have stuff like that all the way down the list, that's a great sign of a year. It's not going to be one that's going to be remembered in the annals just because you need to have those runaway bangers like the Oppenheimer's Barbies of those. Like you have to have, and they don't have those this year. But I really like 2024. If 2025 is as good as 2024, I'm cool with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Ben, tell people where they could find you and everything you're up to.
You can find me. I have a website. It's icecream4freaks.com. You have all my writings over there. Apparently my new thing is my niche is I interview the direct Oscar nominated directors of short films. That's apparently
Hey,
my thing. I don't
right
know
on.
how that became my thing, but I'm not really complaining. Talk to the directors of Aline. Talk to the director of Anusia. Talk to the director of director and subject of Death by Numbers. Trying to talk to the director of The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent next week. So I mean, so they're really interesting people to talk to, up and coming filmmakers talking about all these different things. You can find me on Blue Sky Letterbox, Twitter at nebisbin, on Instagram at neb.isbin. Like I said, my website, Ice Cream for Freaks, where all my reviews and stuff is posted. Obviously all my podcast appearances, as I'm the David Thewlis of podcasting.
Oh, yes, you are. Absolutely. But hey, so happy to have you back on the show, and hopefully we'll get you back for a regular movie episode sometime soon.
Absolutely, I need to travel to Vegas and somehow get on one of these live shows.
Let's do it. Let's do it. We'll
Yes,
figure
sir.
one out.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about this year's Oscars. Thanks to Ben Miller for joining me on that one, and thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed. You can also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show, and where this weekend I'm sure we'll have a very fun, lively thread going for the Oscars this Sunday. You can also check out our Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, Awesome Movie Year, and from my music career. There's always advanced episodes of Piecing It Together, as well as sometimes video versions of episodes. There's also always a bonus episode of Awesome Movie Year and early access to Awesome Movie Year episodes. And I keep promising that there'll be more music on there soon. There is already lots of music that you can't get anywhere else, but there's really, truly some new music that is like done. I just need to get it up there. It'll be up there soon. But all that and more at patreon.com/bydavidrosen. I appreciate you all just being out there listening to all this stuff, but if you want to support the show, you can do that by signing up for that Patreon. So let's close this out with a piece of music like I always do. And, I recently released a new album called Missing Pieces. It started out as just a compilation of all this unreleased music, and then it turned into genuinely one of my favorite albums that I've put out. So I'm done calling it a compilation, even though there are 40 tracks in total, 24 of which had previously been released as singles, but 16 were brand new songs. And those 16, as far as I'm concerned, are a full-fledged new David Rosen album. And I am so proud of it and so excited that it's out there now. I'm going to play a song from that album. And let's see, what should I play? You know what? We're talking Oscars. We're talking gold. Everyone's going for the gold. I'm going with a track called Golden Arrows from the album Missing Pieces. Hope you enjoy it. We'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.